Take a look at this video.
Thank you. Mr. Sliwa, what's your proposal for helping New Yorkers with the historically high rent burden?
This is the New York City mayoral debate. You can see three people on stage fighting it out on how to run the city. But what about our cities? Hyderabad mayor seat has been vacant since the last 4 months, and no one really talks about elections here. Even worse, the Bengaluru mayor seat has been vacant since September of 2020. That's how seriously we take city governments in India. No one cares, no one protests, things go on as usual. That would be fine if our cities were actually good. But how are our cities? Pretty pathetic, you know, right? And in this video, we're going to see how cities worldwide are dealing with city governments. We're also going to cover the issues plaguing our current system. And then we'll move on to solutions that can solve the problem that we face. So the first case study, the city as an investor. We're going to take the example of a city called Hefei in China. Most people haven't heard of it. It has roughly the population of Hyderabad, around 1 crore. And in April 2020, the height of the coronavirus pandemic, the city made a bet. They invested $1 billion, that's equivalent to 8,000 crores, in a failing company called NIO, an electric vehicle startup. But as part of the deal, NIO had to shift its headquarters to Hefei, build factories there, and source 40% of the components locally. And you know what? NIO survived. And do you know how much the Hefei government made? 7 times in one single year. And here are some statistics. The EV suppliers in that province increased from 12 in 2019 to around 1,200 in 2023. And the EV output in the area from 48,000 to 5,20,000. And now the auto sector in that state contributes 20% of their GDP. This wasn't luck. This is a city government with the power, the mandate, and the autonomy to operate like a venture capital fund, invest in companies, make profits, and at the same time develop the region and the city that it needs to take care of. That's the Hefei example for you. Next we have Medellín, and in this case study we are going to explore how the city can act as a connector. In 1991, Medellín had the highest murder rate in any city across the world. Entire neighborhoods were no-go zones. State had actually stopped functioning in many parts of the city. So the city Medellín is a valley. So at the center of the valley is the main city, and the slums usually started forming on top of the hills. And therefore, getting to these slum areas usually took a lot of time, and therefore the economic disparity between the valley and the hill slopes was actually very, very bad. And therefore, the mayor of the city introduced a new concept. He introduced cable cars as a means of transport. And now, there are 6 cable lines in Medellín connected to their metro system, directly integrated, fully integrated. And that's actually a very, very big success story, because with that cable car came development in these slums. There was also some additional factors that were involved. They started constructing libraries, started constructing park areas around these cable car stations on the hills and slopes. And therefore, a lot of these narco gangs actually started to move away from these slums. And here is an interesting statistic. The homicide rate in Medellín was 381 per 1 lakh people in 1991. And in 2010, it was brought down to 20 per 1 lakh people. This is a significant improvement for a city that was always infested with narco gangs. So crime wasn't just solved by increasing the number of policemen. It improved because of connectivity. A mayor took a decision of building cable cars to connect the most impoverished areas of Medellín to opportunity, the downtown, so that people can commute, do their job, and go back to their homes. It was a city intervention that made things work here. And next we have Bogotá, the capital of Colombia, and in this we'll explore how the city can act as a planner. Mayor Enrique Peñalosa came to office with a simple argument. A city that gives more road space to cars than to people has already decided whose time matters and whose doesn't. So do you know what he did? He banned cars on Sundays. He called it cyclovia. And 20 lakh people on every Sunday came out, walked, played, and cycled throughout the entire city. And because the city couldn't afford a metro line, they built the bus rapid transit system. Something that we see in cities like Ahmedabad, Pune, and Delhi. They called it the Transmillennial. It was a great success. It drew inspiration across the world, even in cities like Pune, Ahmedabad, Delhi as well. So we have 3 different cities, 3 different problems, and 3 unique solutions to solve those problems. But there's one common thread. A mayor with real power, the intent to do good, and at the same time, he was accountable by name. Now let's come back home. A mayor of an Indian city can't call up a company and say, hey, we'll give you this, come to our city. They don't control the budget, they don't control the land, they don't control the planning, they don't even control the traffic police. Let's take the example of HMDA, Hyderabad Metropolitan Development Authority. It controls the land in Hyderabad, but do you know who chairs it? The Chief Minister of Telangana, not the Mayor of Hyderabad. So do you know where the revenue from the land sales go? They go into the state treasury. Now where does it go from the state treasury? It goes into something that's politically useful, not back to Hyderabad. One study it showed that Hyderabad contributes around 90,000 crores to the state revenues. That's around 60% of the total revenue of the state. And what does it get in return as part of the infrastructure budget? Around 10,000 crores. That's like 10% return on investment. The state demands more power from the center and more funds from the center, but when it comes to city governments, it doesn't follow that. It doesn't give powers to the city as well as budgets to the city, and the cities usually are starved and they have no power. And that's by design. The center doesn't want the states to challenge them, the states don't want the cities to challenge them, and that's how the cycle goes on. And here is something that nobody's talking about. New York, Shanghai, Tokyo, as they grew, they started integrating further rather than disintegrating. One mayor, one transit authority, one plan for the entire city. And that makes sense, right? Traffic, sewage, water, housing, they cannot be divided by ward boundaries. You can't say, hey, this part of the city will be like this part of the city will be like this. It's one integrated ecosystem, right? So it doesn't make sense to divide it up. But that's what is happening in Hyderabad. So Hyderabad is doing the opposite. The governing body, GHMC, has been split into three: Hyderabad, Cyberabad, and Malkajgiri. So what does this result in? Three weaker mayors. And who gains? The state. And why does that happen? Because there are three smaller budgets, three mayors competing for the same resources, lesser bargaining power instead of like a collective bargaining power, and that's the issue. The state wants to keep it that way. Because the mayors and councillors are powerless, there are no real issues to talk about during elections. So the 74th constitutional amendment that was passed in 1992 was supposed to give like lots of power to the city governments. And do you know what? Out of the 18 functions that were guaranteed by the constitution for the city governments, only 4 were actually given with full autonomy. The 4 most powerful, urban planning, slum regulation, land regulation, and fire services, were never actually given with full autonomy. The state still controls a part of it. Compare that with issues around the world. Mayors are talking about wildfire response times, homelessness, they're talking about rent freezes, they're talking about metro fare reduction, a lot of real issues. And here is the part that worries me the most. The office is designed to fail. A corporator in Hyderabad earns 7,800 rupees per month. That's it. For context, a sweeper within the same Hyderabad corporation might be earning at least 10 times more than the corporators themselves. So what happens? Who actually runs for being a corporator? Not someone who wants to do public service. It's someone who has money already. Think about it. If someone pays you 7,800 rupees a month, you can't really hire anyone. You can't hire a policy researcher, you can't hire an advisor, you can't hire a legal counsel. You really can't do anything. You can't even have a team of your own. So what happens? Political parties give tickets to people who already have money. They don't want to fund 150 corporators. They want people who can self-finance. So the parties prefer people who have wealth, not competence. But then compare that with New York City. New York City Council member earns almost 1.2 crores per year. Also, they get to recruit an entire team funded by the government itself. So what is the way out? What is actually needed? First, a professionally paid city council office. Pay them handsomely and get serious people into the office, even at a ward level. Second, directly elected mayors with 5-year terms. They need to have real authority over land, planning, policing, transport. And we need the mayor to be really accountable by name. Third, introduce real revenue tools. It should not be limited to property tax. The revenue that Hyderabad generates needs to come back to Hyderabad. So things like income tax, fuel tax, all of these need to have a cut for Hyderabad directly. Fourth, city governments should do some policy innovation. City governments should think like Hefei, not like a sub-office of the state government. Fifth point, do not fragment cities. We need to integrate cities. Dividing up corporations into smaller units just makes the bargaining power lesser, therefore weaker governments. We need consolidation, not bifurcation. And sixth and the hardest one, we, the urban voters, need to care. During elections, there are some booths that have single-digit voter turnouts. That's pretty pathetic. We tweet about Mamdani, good or bad, but we can't even name our own corporator. It's time we take city governments seriously. So, in the end, the cities aren't failing because we can't run them. We have money, we have people, we have talent. We are failing because there's a vested interest in the levels above to keep the city governments weak. There are cities worldwide that are doing a really good job because they have real power. Our cities are not broken by accident. They are broken by design, and the design can be changed.